What you don't have in your bulletin this morning is that this is the sermon and the dean's report. So get comfortable. I got a few hours before the Chiefs game comes on. The Beatitudes, what we just heard. Probably one of the most familiar stories in the Gospels is Matthew's Sermon on the Mount. Certainly it is one of the highlights, one of the big things we all remember about the Gospels, about Jesus' ministry among us. And if we ask someone to recall these, we can probably get most of them. For sure, we would say, "Blessed are the," and fill in the blank. Some of you may give Matthew's responses. Some of you may give Monty Python's responses. I don't know. Blessed are the poor in spirit. Blessed are the meek, the peacemakers, etc. Most of us probably identify the Beatitudes with Matthew, though many of us will recall in Luke's Gospel, we get these as well, called the Sermon on the Plain. And remember, each one is slightly different in what goes on around the sermon. In Luke, Jesus calls his disciples to him, and they all stand on a flat plain, and he begins. And they are not alone, as the crowd is definitely within earshot. And this is on purpose, as Jesus tells both blessings and woes. In Matthew, Jesus takes the disciples alone and goes up the mount, sits down with them, and begins to teach. Blessed are those who follow in the way of God, who are faithful, who endure, who strive to walk humbly with their God. Blessed or happy probably being the better translation, happy are those who fulfill the Lord's requirements. And in this story, we have a complete summary of our readings from Micah and Paul this morning. In Micah, God has a controversy with the people because they have forgotten. And you may ask yourself, again? They forgot again? It seems like the people are always forgetting. They have forgotten God's saving acts of old, forgotten all that the Lord has done for them, and all that the Lord requires of them, to walk humbly with your God. In this line alone, do justice, love kindness, walk humbly with your God. This, we are told, is what the Lord requires of his people, and I would say of us. In my annotated NRSV copy of the Bible, a note on this passage says, in this single sentence, the prophet sums up the legal, ethical, and covenantal requirements of religion and resonates with other prophets such as Amos, Hosea, and Isaiah. Micah, as prophet, foretells the goodness that will come to God's people, and in my mind, points to two very specific things that foretell about Jesus. Jesus as embodiment of these requirements, and Jesus as God incarnate, reminding us of his saving acts before his death on the cross. You may remember in our service on Good Friday, there is a point where a large wooden cross is brought in and we lay it here on the steps. Or if you've done it in another church, it may be somewhat different, but at some point a cross can be brought in. Here at the Cathedral, we typically have instrumental music being played when this happens. But in other places I've been, the choir would sing what is called the reproaches at this point, attributing the same words that we hear in Micah to Jesus. God says these words in Micah, but the music has Jesus repeating them as he is condemned to death. O my people, what have I done unto thee? And wherein have I wearied thee? Testify against me. And the music goes on, just like Micah does, to talk about all these great saving deeds through Egypt and so on. In our own Book of Common Prayer in the Catechism, under the section entitled The Old Covenant, we read this requirement to do justice, love kindness, and walk humbly with your God. Jesus is the full embodiment of this requirement as he came to show us, to give us an example of how to do it. Paul continues this message of Christ as example as he proclaims the cross as the power of God. The cross, Christ crucified, is the saving power for us. And he goes on to talk about what is wise and what is foolish, meaning that it is not the wise who are saved, but those who believe, have faith, walk humbly with our God. Paul writes that God chose things that are not, the lowly, the weak, etc., to nullify the things that are, the rich as in proud, conceited, or haughty. Jesus does this constantly as he turns things upside down. The last shall be first, and the first shall be last. Listen to the words of the Song of Mary, the Magnificat. For he has regarded the lowliness of his handmaiden, and he has filled the hungry with good things, and the rich he has sent away empty. The power of the cross of Christ is the message that saves. Christ died to save us. But we have to remember that we, those who were disciples and beyond, didn't fully understand this until Christ died and rose from the dead after his resurrection. Then they remembered all he said, all he taught them, and the Spirit came upon them to lead them into all truth. The Spirit is certainly here among us now, continuing to lead us and guide us. And the Spirit was with us in 2022. We ushered in a new year, finally one where we were back in person, or at least had the option to be in person, for the start of the year for the first time in 2 years. Over the course of the year, we began or created several new projects. The Strategic Planning Committee met and put out a survey to the Cathedral, and I assure you that committee is still in the process of meeting and working on a plan to carry us forward for many years to come. In 2022, we continued to explore starting a pre-K program of some sort at the Cathedral. After consulting with professionals on a plan for action, accreditation, licensing, and structural changes to Hayden Hall, we concluded the time was not right to embark on this ministry of outreach to the community. But we have done our research and hope the energy is there in the future to see this idea through. We partnered with the Center for Faith and Culture at William Jewell College to be an inaugural participant in a teaching series at the Cathedral, along with other churches in the community. We taught 2 classes in the fall and have 2 for this semester, the first of which I began teaching this past Wednesday. We also created a new pictorial directory, the first since 2014. We accomplished a great deal throughout 2022, and I'm glad to share in our ongoing ministries with all of you. On January 6th, the Feast of the Epiphany, we hosted a wonderful service for the seating of our new Bishop Provisional, Diane Jardine Bruce. It was festive and wonderful as we welcomed her into our diocese to guide us and to lead us forward. Later that month, we held our annual meeting, thanked our outgoing vestry members, and welcomed those newly elected, and set our vestry retreat for later in the year. In February, several of the clergy, wardens, and staff traveled to Atlanta to attend the Consortium of Endowed Episcopal Parishes, or CEEP conference, now renamed the Episcopal Parish Network, or EPN. We will again attend this year in March in Jacksonville, Florida. And we ended the month with our Shrove Sunday pancake coffee hours in anticipation of Lent. March brought with it the vestry retreat and our start to Lent on Ash Wednesday. Our Lenten program offered classes for adults and activities for children and youth, all joining together for Compline here in the nave at the end of the evening. In April, we had our diocesan Chrism Mass, where we received holy oils for the year and renewed our ordination vows. We also had our first in-person Holy Week since I became your dean. My first 2 Holy Weeks included delivering palms and communion to all who requested it, or having a drive-through pickup. It was truly a wonderful experience to actually be with you through Holy Week and Easter, and I look forward to sharing it with you again this year. Following Easter Sunday, we had another first, a retreat with the Cathedral staff and diocesan staff on the Tuesday in Easter week. This allowed us to get to know one another better. We work on the same campus, right next door to each other, yet we hardly see one another. So it was nice to be together, and we will continue that event again this year. Another first for me in 2022 was attending my first North American Deans Conference in Sacramento, California. This is an annual gathering of cathedral deans from the U.S., Canada, and other extra-provincial areas of the Episcopal Church. And it was a great time to be together and to learn from one another and share ideas about how our cathedrals can best serve our communities. This year we will gather in Washington, D.C., hosted by the National Cathedral. In May, we had our Youth Sunday. Many thanks to Claire and all who participated in that service. I look forward to your participation this year. Later in the month, I attended the Bishop Kemper School for Ministry graduation at Grace Cathedral in Topeka. While there, I had the great pleasure of seeing two people close to our cathedral graduate, Brittany Sparrow Savage and Barbara Wegener. It was a good day. I think you remember it. I look forward to this year's graduation, where we'll have another person connected to Grace and Holy Trinity graduating, our own Robin Risconi. In the summer, we had 3 parish breakfasts between the 8 and 10:30 services. All were well attended, were lively, and I look forward to having them again this summer. We had our parish picnic in June on the Feast of Pentecost. And remember, we have 2 feast days right in a row, Pentecost and Trinity Sunday. And our picnic moves between these 2 days, depending on which date works better. Stay tuned for when we'll have our picnic this year. It will be either May 28th or June 4th. Later in the month, the cathedral participated in a joint diocesan gathering at the Kansas City Pride Parade, and I had the great fortune of carrying one end of the Episcopal banner as we marched. And many thanks to all who marched or helped at the booth in the park or simply came for support. It was a beautiful day, and I look forward to participating again this year. In fact, the message has already come out, so we're going to have a larger presence from the diocese this year, so I'm excited about that. Towards the end of the month, we gathered together as a diocese for a much more somber cause, to hold a prayer vigil against gun violence. I'm grateful for the opportunity to gather, but not grateful for the reason. But even so, we must continue to speak out and act if we hope to stop these senseless acts of violence in our country. As the fall began and the school year started, our children and youth had a back-to-school bash. Thank you for the ice cream. We all enjoyed that. And we held our first ministry fair in many years. A ministry fair is a great way to see all the opportunities there are to serve at the cathedral. And we'll always need people to serve. We'll always need people to help. This year was particularly good as the fair helped restart our Holy Hands ministry, which provides food for the coffee hour after the 10:30 service. We now have the first and third Sundays covered. I'm told we're close to covering the 4th Sunday. So please let me know if you'd like to do that. We could always use extra hands, extra holy hands, to do that work. And let me know if there's any ministry or group you would like to be a part of. This past fall also saw our annual blessing of the animals on the Saturday nearest the feast of St. Francis, the return of our healing service on the Sunday closest to the feast of St. Luke, our fall festival, our annual fall festival, our second annual hymn sing, diocesan convention, and my first experience of a full pipe and drum Kirkin service, which was an amazing thing to behold. In the fall, we welcomed Deacon Barbara into our cathedral family, and we're so glad to have you here. We also took some time to care for our own facilities by cleaning out many of the storage rooms in Lower Founders, allowing for better use of our space and allowing for a new tenant to come in. Through a gift in memory of Dean Earl and Nancy Kavanaugh, we were able to do some repairs in the Lower Founders kitchen in anticipation of Pete's Garden, coming in and operating their food rescue business in that space. And once again, Lower Founders is being used to serve meals in our community. And we are glad to welcome Pete's Garden to our campus. And there will be volunteer opportunities as we both work together to answer our call and mission to serve. Our mission to serve takes all of you, and I, for one, am forever grateful to your support of the work and ministry of our cathedral. We don't exist without you, and I'm very proud to be here and to serve all of you. In December, we welcomed the Nativity Puppets once again, welcomed back the in-person City Come Again celebration with William Jewell, welcomed Bishop Diane for her official visit, and welcomed all who came to join with us to celebrate the Nativity. And thank you especially to Brittany and to our children and youth who participated once again in the Christmas pageant at the 5 o'clock service, Christmas Eve. All said, 2022 was a good year for the cathedral. Stewardship remained strong, as did people joining our services, both in person and online. Thank you to all who have helped make it a strong year. Thank you to the cathedral staff for your tireless work. Thank you to the wardens and vestry for your tireless work and for being good stewards and caretakers of our facilities. Thank you to all ministry groups, to the Altar Guild, the choir, lay ministers, acolytes, lectors, ushers, greeters, live streaming team, Eucharistic visitors, healing team, holy hands, funeral committee, and everyone for your work. I try to list these things, and I'm always afraid I'm going to forget someone, so please know everyone is included here. To all our committees, social outreach, budget, finance, stewardship, buildings and grounds, community engagement, security, communications, welcoming, and any others. I appreciate so much your involvement. And to all who facilitate and lead study groups, or all who teach, thank you. Thank you. You are the people that make this place and these ministries work. Thank you for allowing me to be your dean and for letting me serve in this great cathedral. I look forward to all we will accomplish together in 2023 and all the ways we will continue to serve God's people from this place. What is required of us? To do justice, love kindness, and walk humbly with our God. Jesus says, "Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. Blessed are the merciful, for they will receive mercy. Blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. Blessed are those who are persecuted for righteousness' sake, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven." We are those people if we fulfill our requirements. We are those people if we endure persecution on behalf of doing what is right in the eyes of God, in the love of Christ. We are those people if we do justice, even when it hurts. Love kindness to all people, not just the ones we deem worthy. And walk humbly with our God, not proud, not boasting, but humbly. Then we are truly blessed forever. Amen.